Hey, it's Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History from 1877 to present, and we're going to pick up with, once again, a review for the U.S. History Map Assessment. And we told you how important that map assessment is, and we keep harping on it, and we want you to understand it is the gateway to you becoming a senior. If you do well in that map assessment, you don't have to worry about those pesky state tests the rest of the way, and you can just concentrate on enjoying your senior year. Now, how can you become successful when it comes to the map assessment, when it comes to U.S. history? Well, you're going to have a pretty good knowledge base. And we've offered you some ideas about what you can do to improve that in our previous video, of course, that we gave you on imperialism. Today, what we're going to do is look at some of those types of questions that you may encounter and try to give you some ideas about what some of those correct answers are. But once again, there's nothing more important in my mind for you to have a good knowledge base, of course, coupled with some of the strategies that we'll talk about. All right, what we're going to do, of course, is look at, standard 4 here on imperialism. This first question says, complete the timeline by writing the description for each late 19th century event from the list below onto the timeline in the order in which the events occurred. In other words, what we have to do is, of course, is put them in order in terms of which one of them went first, which one of them was second, which one was third. And what we will do, for the sake of argument, is we'll number them. We'll say this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, and we'll say this last one down here is 5. So what we'll do, of course, is just put the number over here, but on the actual assessment, what you'll be probably required to do is to write those answers out. Okay, what we did, of course, is give you a number, and remember what we said now. You will probably have to write these out on the test if they give you this type of question, but to expedite things, what we've done is assign each one of them a number. So if we were going through and trying to figure out which one of these things happened first, the first thing that happens first is yellow journalism. So that would be number 4. So when yellow journalism dominates the print media in the United States, and that's because of William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer. The next thing happens is a letter is intercepted, and this particular letter is criticizing, of course, President William McKinley, and that would be number 3, the Delaunay letter. And then the next thing that happened, of course, and we just do, given these things, of course, in the order in which they happened, would be the USS Maine explodes in Havana Harbor, and that's 2. And then, of course, yellow journalism dominates the media, number 4. Okay, then we have 2 left. So the U.S. declares war, that would be number 1. And then the United States acquires Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines as a result of the war, that would be 5. So basically, when we look at what happens, the events that happen, of course, leading up to it, is this particular order. And once again, this may be the type of question, and it was a few years ago, and we never know what the Department of Education is going to do in terms of what they're going to recycle. So don't be surprised if you see this type of question. What we're trying to do, of course, is cover all of our bases. All right, Imperialism Assessment Standard 4. This excerpt comes from U.S. Secretary of State John Hayes, 1899, open door note. The government of the United States would be pleased to see His German Majesty's government give formal assurances and lend its operation in securing like assurances from the other interested powers that each, within its respective sphere of whatever influence, first, will in no way interfere with any treaty, port, or any vested interest within any so-called sphere of influence or least territory it may have in China. Second, the Chinese treaty tariff of the time being shall apply to all merchandise landed or shipped to all such ports or within said sphere of influence unless they be free ports, no matter to what nationality it may belong, and that duties so leviable shall be collected by the Chinese government. And basically the open door policy, we talked about it once again. Now this is all, addition. We know that the open door policy had to do, of course, is making sure that the United States of America and other nations had equal trading opportunities in China. And that helps you, to know that if you go through and look at the fact list. What was the purpose of the correspondence? Well, it's all about the open door policy, right? To request that Germany relinquish control of Manchuria to the Chinese government. It didn't say anything about giving up anything. To request that Germany relinquish control of German-built railroads in the Chinese government. It didn't say anything about that. To request that nations holding spheres of influence in China share trading rights in China with the United States. To request that nations holding spheres of influence in China return acquired territory to China in accordance with agreements in the United States. It didn't say anything about returning. But what it did do is talk about spheres of influence. And the best answer in this particular case is C. In what way was economics one cause of the Spanish-American War? Americans needed to eliminate competition from Cuban textile mills. Spanish merchants wanted to control consumer goods in China, entering Cuba, excuse me. Spanish traders needed Cuban raw materials to meet consumer demand, customer demand. Americans wanted to promote their sugar and tobacco investments in Cuba. In what way was economics one cause of the Spanish-American War? Americans wanted to protect. We had invested a lot of sugar, invested in sugar and tobacco in Cuba, and we wanted to protect that. So, the Spanish-American War was fought because we felt like the Spanish, of course, were a threat to that. Imperialism assessments stand for the following excerpts from President Theodore Roosevelt's 1904 annual address to Congress: chronic wrongdoing or an impotence which results in general loosening of the ties of civilized society may, in America as elsewhere, ultimately require intervention by some civilized nation. And in the Western Hemisphere, the adherence of the United States to the Monroe Doctrine may force the United States, however reluctantly, in favor of cases to such wrongdoing or impotence, to the exercise of international police power. Once again, we talked about the Roosevelt Corollary, and we talked about that in terms of our overview of imperialism, but we also gave you some facts about the Roosevelt Corollary in terms of what it did as a police power. So if you know that, based on what you read here, it says, why did Roosevelt propose this change in foreign policy? By proposing to police the Western Hemisphere, Roosevelt hoped to annex more territory for Americans. Roosevelt proposed the amendment to the Monroe Doctrine to decrease his own economic and political power. Nope. Roosevelt proposed this amendment to the Monroe Doctrine to protect American economic and territorial interests. By proposing to police the Western Hemisphere, Roosevelt hoped to protect the European culture. No, he didn't want European culture here. He didn't want, to annex more territory for Americans. What he basically wanted to do was to protect American economic and territorial interests. He didn't want these countries to enter into agreements, of course, with these other nations. Now, if annexing these, was an option, then that'd be something else entirely. The following excerpt is from President Roosevelt's 1904 annual address to Congress, chronic wrongdoings. I think that's the one we just had. Okay, this is the same one. It says, and it's what we just read, but it was a part B to that question. So once again, it's a different type of question. It kind of threw me for a loop for a second. It's the same excerpt, same question, but they gave you a part A and a part B. And the part B says, how did this policy described in the excerpt affect America's geographic interests? Due to the threat of rebellion, Puerto Rico became a territory of the United States? Nope, that's because of the Spanish-American War. Once again, straight from your fact list. The United States gained control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines after a war with Spain. The United States gained territory in Latin America by ending a blockade of Venezuela by European creditor nations. Due to the threat of intervention by European creditor nations, the United States became a protector of Latin American countries. Well, it says the following excerpt is from President Theodore Roosevelt's 1904 annual address to Congress. Well, when you look at it, think about it for a second. It says, how did the policy described in the excerpt, we're talking about the Roosevelt Corollary. How did it affect America's geographic interests? Well, it couldn't be this one due to rebellion. It couldn't be this one because that's Spanish-American War. The United States gained territory in Latin America by ending a blockade of Venezuela by European creditor nations. Due to the threat of intervention by European creditor nations, the United States became a protector of Latin American countries. And the answer is D. Imperialism Assessment 4. Once again, we have a Philippine Islands for Privileges, see Uncle Sam. In this 1898 political cartoon, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany is pictured looking at the sign. Once again, a part A and a part B question. This political cartoon represents a consequence of the World War I, World War II, the Russo-Japanese War, the Spanish-American War. Well, Spanish-American War. All right, the second part, standard 4.3, at the time the political cartoon was published, the United States had A, just emerged as a new world power, just mediated peace between two countries, declared neutrality? Nope. The best answer, Spanish-American War just over, United States of America becomes a world power. This chart describes different U.S. foreign policies toward Latin America during the early 20th century, president, foreign policy, and their description: Roosevelt, big stick diplomacy, military to achieve political goals, diplomatic goals; Taft, dollar diplomacy, using investment to achieve U.S. influence; Woodrow Wilson, moral diplomacy, promoted human rights and national integrity and opportunity. Based on the chart, and your own knowledge. Which statement best describes how the focus of Woodrow Wilson's foreign policy toward Latin America differed from those of his two predecessors? Wilson supported the spread of self-governance and democracy. Wilson increased army intervention to restore order. Wilson encouraged American business to infuse money in the area. Wilson proposed providing U.S. financial support to rebuild the war-torn region. We supported the spread of self-governance and democracy. So, can't be this. Can't be this. So we have A or D that we have to choose from. Which Wilson supported the spread of self-governance and democracy? Yes. Wilson promotes providing U.S. financial support. That sounds more like dollar diplomacy. Best answer is A. This excerpt about President Theodore Roosevelt's role as a Rough Rider during the Spanish-American War comes from a Library of Congress article. Before becoming President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He resigned in 1898 to organize the Rough Riders, the first volunteer cavalry in the Spanish-American War. The Rough Riders are best remembered for their charge up San Juan Hill on July 1st, 1898. Roosevelt and his Rough Riders were a colorful group of characters during the war. They received the most publicity of any unit in the Army. Roosevelt's role as a Rough Rider: A, jeopardized foreign relations after he was elected president, enhanced his military career but did not affect his political career, turned him into a national hero and celebrity in the eyes of many, hindered his political career, and made him his president to run a hard-fought battle. Nope, it made him a hero. All right, which statement describes an economic reason for the U.S. annexation of Hawaii? So money, economics, money. British ship owners needed a new place to resupply British whaling ships. Protestant missionaries wanted to convert nations to population to Christianity. It don't have anything to do with money. Sugarcane planters from the United States found a profitable source of sugarcane on the islands. Queen Lelia wanted to strengthen her monarchy. Nope, they overthrew her. So the best answer is going to either be A or going to be C. So why would we want to take over Hawaii to help Britain? Best answer is C. All right, what we tried to do was to give you some insights in some of the questions, of course, that you may encounter when we take, the U.S. history map assessment. And this, of course, is from one of the categories. And as much as 27% of the questions can come from just this particular category. So it's a very important category, of course, for you to pay some attention to. Now, once again, these questions require, in some cases, for you to do more than just put A or B, of course, in the blank. And it may be questions, of course, that are based on excerpts that have part A and part B, and maybe a cartoon that has a part A and part B. So you should be very, very conscious of the types of questions, of course, that may be asked. And also, keep in mind that it's very important to have a great knowledge base when it comes into taking this particular test. And if you do that, you can have some success when it comes to the map assessment for U.S. history. Now, once again, I'll always reiterate, this is a very important assessment because it's the last assessment that you take, of course, on your way to becoming a senior. This is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History. We hope that you gained some insights, and we hope you got some benefit of some of the things that we talked about in terms of preparing for the map assessment of U.S. history. Once again, do as well as you possibly can, and with that, we'll see you next time.